It is 5 in the morning, and about 230 police officers and officials are moving through a small settlement in the dark, going house by house and emptying every one of them. The people inside are sick. Some of them are children who are not sick at all. It does not matter. They are loaded up and taken away, and the settlement they lived in is wiped off the map by lunchtime. I know how that sounds. You are probably telling yourself a country does not just erase its own citizens like that, on the record, with paperwork. But it did, and it was legal in Japan for 89 years. The people who lived through it were pushed onto sealed islands, given new names, and forgotten on purpose. Their families turned them in. Their families refused their ashes. And in one place high in the mountains, people were locked in unheated cells until they froze. 13 places Japan built to make its own people disappear. Number 13, 5 in the morning, the 9th of July 1940, and the streets around a temple in Kumamoto are filling with police. There is a settlement here, next to a temple called Honmyo-ji, where people with leprosy have gathered to live, because nobody else will have them. Leprosy, the illness now called Hansen's disease, is barely contagious, and today it is completely curable. Back then, Japan treated it like a curse. So about 230 police and officials surround the settlement, and they go through it house by house, and they empty it. When the count is done, they have taken 157 people, and this is the part that should stop you. 28 of them are children who do not have the disease at all. 11 more are adults who are not sick either. It does not matter to anyone that morning. Everyone gets loaded up and shipped to a sanatorium called Kikuchi Keifuen, and the settlement is gone. This did not come out of nowhere. It was the physical result of a campaign I will come back to, a nationwide push to make every corner of Japan clean of people like this. Keep that raid in your head, because everything else on this list is what happened after the trucks pulled away. And the first place many of them landed was an island you reached by a pier built for one purpose. Number 12. Picture a small boat crossing a narrow stretch of water toward an island, and everyone on board knows they are not coming back. This is Nagashima, an island in Okinawa, and in 1930 it became the site of Eisen, Japan's first national sanatorium for leprosy. A sanatorium is just a medical word for a place where the sick are sent to be treated, or in this case, to be kept for the rest of their lives. The patients did not arrive at a normal dock. They came in at a separate landing the records literally call the patient's pier, built so the sick would never touch the same ground as anyone else. You crossed it once, and that crossing was the point. It said in concrete that you had left the world, and isolation here did not last a year or two. It lasted 60 years and more. By 1943, there were more than 2,000 people on the island, 2009 to be exact, packed onto a strip of land you could walk across in minutes. A whole town of people the country had decided to file away. And the moment a new patient stepped off that pier, the first thing waiting for them was not a doctor or a bed, it was a bath. Number 11. You have just arrived. You are told to take off your clothes, all of them in front of strangers. Your name is taken away and you are given a number instead. Your belongings are boxed up and confiscated. And then you are put into a bath, but not to get clean. The water is mixed with cresol, a disinfectant so harsh that today the same chemical is sold as a pesticide. That was the welcome. Stripped, numbered, and dipped in something now used to kill insects, because the staff believed you yourself were the infection walking in the door. Then came the quietest cruelty of all. They took your cash, every yen, and they handed you back coupons that only worked inside the sanatorium, paper money worthless anywhere else on earth. Do you see what that does? It is a wall you cannot climb, made out of money instead of stone. Even if you slipped past the fence and reached the mainland, you had nothing in your pocket that anyone out there would take. Escape was not forbidden so much as made pointless. And if a bath and fake money sound like a strange kind of prison, the next place built a real one, out of a ditch and a wall of thorns you can still see today. If this is the kind of buried Japanese history you want more of, go ahead and subscribe, because this is the only thing this channel digs into. Number 10. Somewhere on the edge of Tokyo, there is a deep ditch and a fence of holly, a thorny bush grown 3 meters high, about 10 feet, and it is still standing. This is Tama Zen Shonen. It opened in 1909 under the name Zensei Hospital, ringed like a fort, a moat of dug earth on one side, and a living wall of thorns on the other, so the people inside stayed inside. At its peak in 1943, it held 1,518 patients, and when you were admitted, they did to you what they did on the island. They gave you a new name, not a nickname, a replacement. You entered as somebody, and you became somebody else, cut off from your family. There is a reason for that new name, one of the saddest things on this whole list, but I am going to make you wait for it, because it deserves its own place further down. For now, just hold the picture. A wall of thorns on the outskirts of one of the biggest cities on the planet, hiding people who had been renamed so their own relatives could pretend they were gone. Now, all of this, the raids, the island, the thorns, none of it happened by accident. Somebody organized it, somebody made it a national project, and got ordinary people to do the reporting themselves. Number 9. Imagine your own neighbor watching your house, deciding whether to report you, not for a crime, for being ill. That was the machine behind everything you have seen so far, and it had a name. The Moraiken Undo, which translates as the no leprosy patients in our prefecture movement. Starting around 1929 and running hard through the middle of the 1930s, it was a government-funded campaign with a single goal: to make every prefecture in Japan able to say it had 0 patients left. 0. Clean. And the way you hit 0 is you find every sick person and you take them away. And this is the ugly genius of it. The state did not do the finding alone. It asked the public to do it. Neighbors were encouraged to quietly report the sick people living near them. And yes, that included their own relatives. The campaign flooded the country through every channel it had: newspapers, radio, films, and the schools, teaching a whole generation that a sick neighbor was a stain to be scrubbed out. This is what sent those 230 officers to Honmyo-ji at dawn. It turned fear into a civic duty. And once the country believed that isolation was not just legal, but patriotic, it could build sanatoria anywhere it liked. Even on an island where you could stand on the shore, see the mainland with your own eyes, and know you would die without ever touching it. Number 8. A person stands on a beach looking across the water at the mainland. It is right there, close enough to see the buildings. They will never set foot on it again. This is Oshima, an island in Kagawa, where a sanatorium called Seishoen was established in 1909. Of all the national sanatoria in Japan, this was the only one on an isolated island of its own, and at its peak it held more than 700 people. The cruelty here was not a wall or a bath, it was the view itself. You could see the ordinary world, the shops and the roads and the lives going on every single day, and the water in between might as well have been 1,000 miles. That was the sentence. Not a dark cell, but a beautiful, unbearable distance. And this is the detail that turns this one over in your chest. People still live on Oshima today. About 50 of them, elderly, long cured, decades cured, and they have stayed. Not because anyone forces them anymore. Because after a lifetime of being erased, this island is the only community they have left. The mainland has no place for them. The people who took everything from them became, in the end, the only home they knew. Hold on to that idea of a life with no way back to your family, because the next place is where I finally tell you about those new names and why the dead were turned away. Number 7, I am going to stop you here for a second, because I have walked you through raids and thorns and freezing water, and this one is different. It is still not a happy place. Nothing on this list is, but there is a small light in it, the only one, and after everything else, I think you have earned it. This is Amami Wakuen in Kagoshima, and it was the last of these sanatoria ever built, put up in the closing years of the war, around 1943 and 1944. And it holds a single, strange, gentle distinction. It was the only sanatorium in all of Japan where the patients confined inside were allowed to give birth and keep their child. Let that sit for a moment because of how quiet and warm it sounds. And then let the shadow of it arrive. Because if one place being allowed to raise a child is remarkable, it means that everywhere else in every other sanatorium on this list, that was not allowed. The very fact that Amami Wakuen stands out proves what was normal. A baby born here could stay, a baby anywhere else could not. So even the one soft spot on this list is really a window, showing the darkness in every other room. And that darkness is the reason people gave up their own names to walk through these gates. Number 6, a man signs the intake book with a name that is not his. He is protecting the people he loves by making sure they can never be traced to him. This is the reason for the renaming you have watched happen twice already. Patients entered these places under false names on purpose, so that their families on the outside would not carry the shame of being related to them. Think about the arithmetic of that. To love your parents, your children, your husband, you erased yourself from them. You became a stranger so they could stay clean. And it did not stop when you died. Every sanatorium had to build its own crematory and its own charnel house, a small building just to hold the ashes of the dead. Because when a patient died, the families usually would not come to claim the body. Their own son, their own sister, left unclaimed, because taking the ashes home meant admitting the person had ever existed. So the islands kept them. Shelves of the unclaimed dead, under names that were not even real. And this is how deep that shame was carved. When survivors finally sued the government in the year 2001 and won, most of them still would not use their real names in court. Decades later, with the law on their side, they were still hiding. That is what almost a century of this does to a person. Now, some of these places did not just erase people slowly. Some of them killed people fast all at once, and the sea did it while the whole country was looking the other way. Number 5. It is 1945. There is a war on, the largest one the world has ever seen, and on a sealed island colony in Okinawa, people are dying faster than almost anywhere behind the lines. This is Miyako Nansen, part of the leprosy isolation system pushed out to the far southern islands. And in that 1 year, the death rate inside it passed 40%. 40 out of every 100 people gone in a single year. The cause, almost every time, was not the disease everyone feared. It was malaria, a mosquito sickness tearing through a confined, weakened, undersupplied population that had no way to leave and no one coming to help while the war swallowed everything. That is the horror of a sealed colony in wartime. The thing that kills you is not even the thing they locked you away for. But I promised you this list was not only darkness. And here is a real piece of light, a hard one, earned by the patients themselves. In Okinawa, the people inside these places organized. They formed patient associations, and they pushed back, and they actually forced a change into the law. When Okinawa wrote new legislation in 1961, the patients had fought hard enough that it included an option to be treated while living at home, instead of being shipped away for life. The very people the country tried to erase organized well enough to bend the law back a few degrees. They did not win all of it, but they won that. And that matters because the next place shows you what happened when nobody could push back at all, when the thing coming was the strongest storm the country had ever recorded. Number 4. This one is heavy, and I am going to handle it carefully, because it is the kind of thing a country only admits to long after the fact. From 1948 all the way to 1996, Japan had a law on its books called the Eugenic Protection Law. And under it, patients in these sanatoria were sterilized and forced to end pregnancies so that they could not have children. That is the plain fact of it. The state decided which of its citizens were allowed to have a future, and for the people on these islands, the answer was none. I want to be exact about the scope because it matters. This law did not only touch leprosy patients. Across every group it covered, nationally, about 25,000 people were sterilized without their consent. 25,000 futures closed by the state. And for a long time, nothing was done, and the people it happened to grew old, carrying it in silence. Then, finally, in July of 2024, Japan's Supreme Court ruled that this law had been unconstitutional all along, and it took the unusual step of removing the time limit for victims to seek compensation, because the court understood that many had stayed silent for decades out of the very shame the system had branded onto them. I am not going to dress this up or draw it out. It is enough to say it plainly, as the highest court in the country eventually did, that this was a wrong the state committed against its own people, and then admitted. Now, from a wrong that unfolded slowly over half a century to one that took a single night, and a wave nobody saw coming. Number 3. The 21st of September, 1934. A sanatorium sits low and flat on reclaimed land near Osaka, right at the water's edge, and out at sea, the strongest typhoon ever recorded to hit Japan up to that point is turning toward the coast. This is Sotojima. More than 3,000 people would die across Japan that day in what became known as the Muroto typhoon. And Sotojima was built in the worst possible place for it, low, exposed, surrounded by water, with hundreds of confined patients who could not simply run. When the storm surge came in, it went over the whole place. Here is where I have to be honest with you about the numbers, because this is one of those moments where the record itself goes quiet. Roughly 260 confined patients are believed to have drowned that night. Believed. Not confirmed to the last name, because the place that was supposed to keep records of these people was itself underwater, and some of those people had entered under false names in the first place. So the true count is something you reach for and cannot quite close your hand around. 260 souls, give or take, held in a place they were not allowed to leave, drowned in the dark on land the state had chosen for them. The survivors were gathered up and rebuilt into a new sanatorium, Honmyo-ji, on Nagashima, the same island from earlier in this list. They lost everything and were moved to another island to keep being isolated all over again. And that brings me close to the end of this list, to a courtroom, and to one man whose case still sits like a stone in Japan's legal history. Number 2, a courtroom but not a normal one. The officials handling the evidence are wearing gloves, and they are handling it that way because the man on trial has leprosy,
and they are afraid to touch what he touched. His name was Matsuo Fujimoto, and I can name him because his case is public record and history has taken his side. In 1951, there was a killing, and Fujimoto was arrested for it. He was tried, but not in an ordinary court. His case went through special segregated proceedings that people came to call the leprosy courts, set up so that a patient could be tried without ever entering the normal justice system, sometimes convened inside the sanatorium itself. And the evidence against him was thin. The weapon he supposedly used had no blood on it. Details did not line up. He said to the end that he did not do it. It did not matter. He was convicted, and in 1962 he was executed by hanging. Thousands of people petitioned to stop it. They were ignored. And here is the part that turns this from a tragedy into an indictment. In 2005, decades after his death, an official government committee reviewed how his case had been handled and concluded that the trial did not come close to satisfying what the Constitution required. Not close. Which is a careful, official way of saying the country hanged a man it should never have convicted, in a court it should never have built. Before I take you to number 1, do me one quick favor and tap the like button. I am just getting this channel off the ground, and on a heavy subject like this one, it honestly makes a real difference. Thank you, because number 1 is the coldest place on this entire list, and I mean that in the most literal way there is. Number 1, high in the mountains of Gunma, inside a sanatorium called Kuryu Rakusen-en, there is a small concrete building, and the patients had a name for it. They called it the Monju, the special ward, though there was nothing special about it except what it was for. It was a prison. A punishment prison built in 1938, and this is the detail that makes it different from every other cell on this list. It was not for one sanatorium. Patients were sent here from sanatoria all across the whole country. Anyone deemed too difficult, anyone who broke rules, anyone who tried to escape their island and got caught. They were shipped to this one building in the mountains to be broken. Inside were 8 cells of bare concrete, no heat, nothing. And these are the mountains of Gunma, where winter comes down hard. The temperature inside those cells reached minus 20 degrees Celsius, about minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Read that again. Inside, a person locked in a concrete box in that cold does not last, and they were left there for weeks. 93 prisoners passed through the Monju. 22 of them died in it, almost 1 in 4. And I know what it was like in there because someone who survived it told me. A former patient who was 19 years old at the time testified to carrying the frozen bodies of other prisoners out of those cells. 19. Carrying out the dead. In 1947, the whole thing was finally exposed, and the director of the sanatorium was removed. The building stood as a ruin for decades, and in 2014, a reconstruction of it was opened as a museum, so that you can walk in and feel the cold coming off that concrete, and understand that this was not some distant century. This was a punishment prison for 6 citizens, run by the state, closed within living memory. So let me leave you with the one thing I could not stop thinking about. All of this, every raid, every island, every frozen cell, every name traded away at the gate, all of it was legal. Forced isolation was written into Japanese law in 1907, and it was not repealed until 1996, 89 years. A person could be born under that law, live a whole life under it and die under it, and never once break a single rule, because the rule was simply existing. It was only in the year 2001 that a court in Kumamoto ruled the whole thing unconstitutional, and the Prime Minister chose not to appeal, and instead apologized, and the state agreed to pay each surviving person somewhere between 8 million and 14 million yen, roughly $65,000 to $115,000. But money arrives at the end of a life, not the start of one. So here is what I keep turning over. An apology can close a law. Can it ever reach the person who spent 60 years answering to a name that was never theirs? I do not think anyone knows. I am not sure the islands do either. If one part of this stayed with you, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. I will see you in the next one.